Thank you, Ashley and Joe and Rennie. And good morning and welcome for those of you who are joining us online this morning. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Tulsa. I had to give a weather report since last week's weather report was a little bit more uncertain, shall we say. So we are certainly enjoying the sunshine and the return of the green and the summertime to our community. Well, you know, I had an experience many years ago when I first got into ministry. A woman had come into my office to talk to me and share a little bit about her personal story. And she continued to go on and on about how bad it was. And then she said, oh, and by the way, I just wanted to tell you, I was at Yosemite this past weekend. And you know, when I'm there in the mountains, I can see God and I can experience God. But then when I come home, everything is just awful, and she goes on and on about it. And I thought to myself, or I said out loud to her, I said, isn't it odd that you can see God in the mountains and the trees and the ocean and the animals, but when you look in the mirror, you can't see it in yourself? And have you ever told someone something that had nothing to do with them, but it was all about you? In that moment, as I said that, I went, and Marianne, this is a message for you. It had nothing to do with her. And I went home and I've contemplated that almost 30 years ago. I remember it so clearly. The moment I almost kind of went, you know, how you take in a breath and you go, oh my gosh, why is it? It's so easy to see God in mountains and beauty. Even, you know, in the storms that we've experienced, there was a sense of beauty. Certainly there was a sense of the destruction, but there was also a tremendous sense of the power of storms. I mean, there is a beauty in that, if you will. And so, you know, I thought to myself, what is that it's so easy to see it outside of myself, but it is not so easy to see it in me. When we travel, we watch over the years as things change, and we were in France in 2015. And our tour guide, Sandra, said, you see all those young people standing on the bridge? She said, they're taking selfies. Well, obviously, the Eiffel Tower. Look at me, I'm here at the Eiffel Tower. She said, but you know what the interesting thing is? They don't want to know anything about the Eiffel Tower. I said, what do you mean? She said, you watch. And these, I'm sorry, they were all young people. They got off the bus. They all had their cell phones. They got in groups. They had to make sure the Eiffel Tower was right, you know, in the shot. And then they got back on the bus. And the tour guide was standing there going, and nobody was listening. And then they went to another place, Notre Dame, got a bunch of selfies at Notre Dame, got back on the bus, and never learned anything about the cathedral. And I thought, wow, what an interesting thing that you have come all this way. You have paid all this money so that you could get a picture. Listen, in Photoshop, I'll save you a lot of work. You can just do a cut and paste. You don't have to travel all that way, because what you have now is a picture and no experience. You don't have any experience of touching the Eiffel Tower, of walking underneath it and seeing this incredible, massive structure. You don't have any sense of going up in it, or people that are excited about it or scared about it, or all of those things. All you have is a picture, and you don't even know when it was built, or Monsieur Eiffel would be so upset that you don't know about his tower, you know? And so it's like, wow, is that the way we go through life? We want to take selfies of where we are. We're here, but we don't engage in life. Last month, we were talking about the 12-step program. And I love the 12-step program because it lays out a definitive pattern and a process. And the thing about the 12-step programs is that you don't run from step 1 to step 12. You have to go through the journey of the steps, and when you get all the way to 12, you recognize you start all over again, and you grow and evolve, and you mature in your understanding of what the step is. You mature in your awakening to what it means to live a new and healthier lifestyle. One of the things I think that Unity misses, or at least I miss in Unity, is that we really are not an organization that has a certain structure like that. And there's a mixed whammy about not having structure, isn't there? It's like, on a way, I wish we did have a structure, but then in a way, I would rebel against it if we did. Isn't that the truth about how we live our life? It's like, I'm going to tell you how to do this, and you'll say, well, I'll double dog dare you. Mom said be in at midnight. I was in at midnight. Okay, it was 12:06. It was close. Midnight was still on the clock. And we do that. And I thought to myself, how very interesting it is that we as human beings like structure, need structure, rebel against structure, and don't want it. And so if we get into something that's too loose and unstructured, it kind of leaves us floundering. If we get into something that's so structured, we may be so rebellious against it that we never embrace the principles. So we've got to find some sort of what I'm going to call happy medium between the two. And our journey, our spiritual journey, is no exception. Now this is most fascinating, I think, because you remember a couple months ago we were talking about Paul's letter to the Galatians. Now the Galatians were in Asia Minor, in modern-day Turkey, and they said to Paul, well, we've done everything we know that you have talked about, that Jesus said was the Christian message, if you will. Now we want to go to the next level. And so we've decided that the next level is to be circumcised, because if Jesus was a Jew, then we need to be Jewish too. And Paul's like, no, you misunderstand. No, this isn't the way this goes down. As you get into baptism, which was the sort of the benchmark of the tradition. You had to do some studies up to that point. You had to do some fasting up to that point. And then at a moment when all of those understandings were complete, then there was a baptism. It was a big ritual in the early church, and one that kind of anchored all of the churches regardless of their various teachings. And that was to be the hallmark now of your new life in Christ. But you see, we as human beings like a challenge. We want to be a little bit better. We want to go a little bit farther. We want to go a little bit more. And I think that what happens is we tend to grab onto things that we're rushing into, and on the one hand, in a spiritual sense, they don't really give us the depth. Yet, without sort of the challenge, we don't do it. Isn't that interesting? We like that sort of certain structure that things have. And I think to myself, well, why might that be? Well, some years ago, I decided to take this 16-week challenge on the Leslie Samsung videos that we were doing aerobic activity. 16 weeks of aerobic, every single day. And I was like, really? I don't know what I've signed up for. I was sweaty, I was hot. I was like, why did I do this? But by the time I got done, I was like, I did it. There's a sense of achievement that we get when we strive towards something. I think that nothing else really gives us that same kind of internal empowerment. That's probably the word I would use. It's like, if I could do that, then maybe I could do something else. See, we live in these structures of knowing this is how my life is, and this is where I live, and this is what I can do, and more importantly, this is what I can't do. And when I do something that I say I can't do, then all of a sudden it calls into question everything that I said I can't do. Because if I could do that one thing that I said I couldn't do, and I did it, then what might I be able to do if somehow I had a structure in place to sort of challenge myself? See, but here's kind of the problem that oftentimes we do. We make the challenge so hard that we give up. You know, before we even get started, it's like, and with the Leslie thing, it was 16 weeks, but you did whatever you wanted to do. It wasn't you had to do all 5 miles every day. You didn't have to do, you know, with weights and workout and all that kind of, it was whatever you wanted to do. Just do it every day. Just do something every day. And the sense that we have of marking those days off, and when the day gets really hard and we still marked it off, maybe we didn't get as far as we did yesterday, but we still marked it off, and maybe we journeyed, but we still marked it off. That's when we begin to feel that sort of inner sense of connection, of empowerment, because it calls us to reach deep, doesn't it? Whatever that reaching deep might be. And so I think to myself, one of the challenges I personally find in Unity is that we don't do enough of that challenge, that we don't do enough where we put out structure. You know, Myrtle Fillmore, in her healing, her famous quote was, "I'm a child of God and I do not inherit illness." But here's the important thing. The lecture they attended with Dr. Eugene B. Weeks that night in 1886 was a long lecture. That man talked for several hours. It wasn't like he said, "Listen up, you Myrtle Fillmore back there, I got a quote just for you." She somehow heard something because she was attentive, she was attuned, she was listening, and her heart was open. So I can't help but wonder if that's part of what our journey is all about, is in as we challenge ourselves to a course of action or a goal or whatever it might be, that what we actually are doing is beginning to open up our ears, look more with our eyes, and be aware with our heart. You know, I think it's the Methodist Church that has "God is still speaking" as their affirmation. Well, God never stopped speaking. The problem is we stop listening. So then to me, the question becomes, how do we start listening? What's the goal? How do we, what might we be able to do to begin to listen with all of our senses a little bit more? Now, you should be thinking and be squirming in the seat because you know that Marianne loves to do these little goal-achieving things, and she's just ramping up to it slowly. But here it is. It's summer, and it's so easy to lose track and to stop saying, well, you know, my spiritual, I'm busy, I'm out, I'm active, I'm traveling, I'm camping, I'm doing different things than I normally do. Over the next 90 days, September 1st is a Sunday, 90 days from now, I'm going to invite you to a challenge. I'm going to invite you to listen, to look, to ponder on some spiritual quote that you can savor over that day. Every single day, I want you, now, hear me clearly. I'm not talking about reading books and books and books. I'm not talking about writing poems. I'm talking about listening. And that's the important key. Myrtle Fillmore heard Eugene B. Weeks, out of thousands of words that he said, "I am a child of God and I do not inherit illness," because she was listening. And we need to attune ourselves to listening. So I'm going to ask you to listen, to look. Maybe it's a song. Maybe it's a sign. You know, have you ever thought how life around you is a sign to you about your spiritual journey? How about road blocked, turn around? That's a very spiritual message. If you happen to be in a space where you're going, I don't know what's going on, I don't know how to handle this problem, and God is saying, the road is blocked, turn around. A song may come to your mind. I love the song that Ashley just did for us a few minutes ago, I Can't Keep From Singing. That's a beautiful song, and I love that song. It's like, I can't keep from singing. Maybe that speaks to your heart today. Maybe something you read in the Daily Word. See, I'm not talking about something complicated, because once we start to get it complicated, what happens? We don't do it. Could it be that every day, for the next 90 days, you look and you listen and you observe and you feel? Now, to keep the challenge going, because we always need an accountability partner, I am going to post a quote every day for the next 90 days on the church's Facebook account. Now, I know not all of you are on Facebook, and I understand that, but what I would like you to do, if you are on Facebook, is you put your quote under mine, so that we keep the idea. You know, what might strike me as important, you go, wow, that really hit me too. So it's a sharing of our spiritual growth and our spiritual journey with one another. Maybe it isn't every day that you do it. Maybe it's just once a month or once a week. But I really challenge you to kind of key into what we're doing on the church's part of it as your accountability partner for your own. Maybe it's the Bible. Maybe it's reading the Daily Word. What can you do? And I really challenge you to think about something. It may not be my idea, which I know is really great, but it may be something else for you. Maybe it's just reading the Daily Word. 3 minutes, 4 minutes if I'm not awake and have to read it again. It's not long, it's not hard. But you see, what will happen over the course of time, as you are ingesting, as you are allowing spiritual truth to come into your being, and you are processing it, what does science tell us? What does metaphysics tell us? That ultimately that which we bring in, we become. You see, we look at the world and we say, oh, look at all the problems, look at all the anger, look at all the fear. But what can we do about it? What we can do about it is set a course for intentionally changing our own lives. I can't change the whole world. I can only change me. And maybe if I change me, then you might come along, and you might come along, and you might come along. That's the whole point of this exercise and idea. Because we want to be able, at the end of that 90 days, just like that woman who could not see, maybe now we can look in the mirror and say, when I look in the mirror, I can see God. When I look in the mirror, I can see love. When I look in the mirror, I can see life. When I look in the mirror, I can see eternity. So often when we look in the mirror, we see what's wrong, what's not right, what doesn't please us, what doesn't look good, what isn't a society's norm, whatever it might be. And so we start the very first moments of the day with a negative thought, with a negative view, because the view that we see, we cannot appreciate as being God. And I invite you to go out and look at the trees, look at our garden. You don't even have to walk very far. Just go to the fellowship hall and look at our garden and its beauty and its wonder. And if you can see God in those trees, if you can see God in those flowers, in the lavender that's out there and the rosemary and all the lilies that are growing, then why can you not see it in His greatest creation, which is you? You see, the problem is we don't see. We live with the blinders on. And so doing a process or an exercise, a little bit of a challenge, maybe for some of you even a little bit of a stretch, to do something over a period of time that's going to challenge you to kind of keep at it or keep on it. It will challenge me to remember to do it also every single day. But somehow, some way, what happens is we begin to get the tools to craft a life. I think if there's one thing photography has taught me, it is the difference between a snapshot and a photograph. Anybody can take a snapshot. All you do is you raise the camera and you hit the button. But to craft a picture means that you have to intentionally engage what it is that you're going to take a picture of. You may have to get down low, you may have to get high, you may only have part of it, you may have to do it with a different lens, you may have to do it with a different setting, but you are crafting the picture, and that's how you create a photograph. Well, why is your life any different? Your life is the same. We are constantly, always crafting a life. We are crafting it to make it better, to make it richer, make it broader, make it fuller. All of the promises that God gave us. When we look in our eyes, in that mirror in the morning, we see eternity. All the possibilities, all the ways that we could live and enjoy and embrace. And yes, things happen to us. And yes, we have a very real human experience that gets sick, that gets ill, that gets uncomfortable, that gets stressed, that gets unhappy, all of those things. But if we cannot see beyond the appearance, then how are we truly ever going to see the beauty of God? We're just taking selfies. Here we are on planet Earth, June 2nd, 2019. Here I am once again at the laundry, at the grocery, and never really engaging in a life. So I challenge you to a little bit of an obstacle course over the summer, the next 90 days, to find that quote, to listen, to look, to open, to hear. Spirit is still speaking at every single moment, at every single turn of your life. And until we get used to listening and seeing and experiencing, we will never be able, like Myrtle Fillmore that night when it became so clear as to how her healing would happen. She didn't know the steps. She didn't know how it was going to work out. And in that moment, she didn't care. But what she knew clearly was that when she looked in the mirror, she truly saw the presence of life, the presence of love, the presence of wholeness, the presence of God. She is not unique, my friends. She is not something special. She is someone just like you and I who struggle to figure it out and to know. And as we attune those skills just a little bit more with each passing day, then we too have the opportunity to hear that still small voice when it speaks directly into our heart over the situations, circumstances, and challenges that we all face in life. Thank you for joining me today, and God bless.